Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Danielle with Damn Fancy Creations, and today we're going to be doing a fun summer themed tumbler. This one is going to have tons of bright colors on it. We're going to apply them in a swirl. I'm going to show you guys how I do my Milky Way on top, and then we're going to add some fun leopard spots, of course, because who doesn't love leopard? I really love how this tumbler turned out. I think it's super fun. Definitely has those summer vibes going. Perfect for the lake or the beach this summer. So if you guys are ready to see how I make this fun swirl Milky Way tumbler, let's get started. Alright guys, so I decided to do two of these tumblers. I did a bright neon swirl and a pastel swirl. I only filmed the bright neon one when I was spray painting it, but you would do the same thing for the pastel colors. So I am going to start with my bright pink, and I'm just going to spray it as I turn the tumbler so it creates that swirl. I also always base coat my cups white, which helps the color pop a little bit more. If you sprayed this neon pink onto a stainless base, it would not look the same. So now we're going to use grape, and I'm just going to spray it along the line where the pink and the white is. And then I hold it a little bit further away and spray it, and then go back and spray my pink, so that helps create that gradient that we are going to create with our glitter as well. Our next one, I believe, is Seaside. I will link all of these in the description. And we're just going to do the same thing. Spray this blue in between the purple and pink. So after the spray paint is completely dry, we are going to apply our glitter. I am using the epoxy method this time. I also use clear spray paint to apply it, but it was raining this day, so I decided just to use epoxy. And we are just applying a very, very thin layer of epoxy on our cups. I do mine probably a little bit thicker than some people do, not quite as thick as if we were covering glitter, but I do like my glitter to kind of soak into the epoxy, especially if I'm doing a gradient or ombre, because it helps the next color kind of fade into the other glitter. Because if the first color does not get absorbed into the epoxy, then that glitter is going to be dry on top, and the next color is not going to stick to the first color, if that makes sense. But if the first glitter soaks up the epoxy, it will be a little bit tacky on top, so then you can sprinkle the next color on top of it and create that gradient or ombre effect that you're looking for. And when I do my ombres or gradients, I always like to use a tea strainer. This really helps just to sprinkle the smallest amount of glitter out that you want, because it's always best to start with too little than too much, because you can always go back and add a little bit more if you want to, but especially if you're using the epoxy method, you cannot really take it away without adding another layer of epoxy and then adding more glitter. So after we've popped all of our bubbles, we are ready to apply our glitter. So this is the tea strainer I use. It does kind of look like a medicine cup. That's just the style that I like. You can get any type of tea strainer that you want. Mine has fairly small holes, but my 0.015 glitter comes out really easily. And I am just tapping this tea strainer along the edges of the paint color that I am applying it to. And don't forget to get your bottoms So we applied this where the pink and the blue meet, and we applied it to where the pink and the purple meet. And then of course, if you need to go back and touch up the middle, you definitely can do that too. And I do start with my lighter colors first, because it's much easier to create a gradient when you're applying your lighter color first and then the darker color on top. If you try to apply the lighter color on top of a darker color, it won't always turn out how you're wanting it to. So now we're moving on to our next color. This purple, I believe, is the K from Peachy Olive Glitter. The bright pink was Prickly Pear Margarita from the Drunk Flamingo. The light pink color was Starburst Martini, also from the Drunk Flamingo. So for this purple, we are just sprinkling it where the purple paint meets the hot pink glitter, and then where the blue and purple spray paint meet. And we're going to repeat this on the other tumbler. This light blue green color is also from the Drunk Flamingo. I just have not gotten a chance to get it up and listed yet. I've just been so busy making tutorials for you guys. I need to sit down and do that one day. So we are just overlapping the light pink slightly just to create that gradient so it's not such a harsh line between the glitter colors. And now we are ready to apply our last color. And this teal color that we are going to be using is Weekend Bernies by Peachy Olive Glitter. It is one of my favorite teals that I have. And we are doing the same thing that we did with our other ones. We are sprinkling it where the blue and purple meet, and then where the pink and blue will meet. And we are just overlapping the colors slightly. And get your bottoms. And then for the pastel one, we are using a champagne, which is Mimosa from the Drunk Flamingo. And same thing, just sprinkling it, slightly overlapping the other two colors that are already on there. This is why I like tea strainers, because you have so much more control versus just pouring from a cup or the glitter shaker. And once you have all your glitter applied, you can go back and touch up little spots if you need to. And once this epoxy is cured, we are going to add 2 more layers of epoxy, and then we will be ready for our next step. Now these tumblers have 2 layers of epoxy. I sanded them really good. I dremeled my top rims and bottom rims. I will link a video here showing you guys how I do that. And now it is time to apply our leopard spots. I just cut some random leopard spots out of opal vinyl. I wasn't too sure how many I needed or what I was going to do with it yet. But I decided to apply it to the color that most closely matched the glitter. I didn't want them to stand out a whole lot. I just wanted them to kind of be there, like when you would turn it and it would kind of catch your eye, if that makes sense. My vinyl spots, you can see that they are all different sizes. I don't typically measure like all of them. I just kind of make my largest one about 1.5 or 1 3/4 inch. I don't want them to be huge. I want them to be small so I can arrange them in a pattern that I like. And I just apply them with my fingers. You can use transfer tape if you want to, but I like to kind of create my own pattern. And this opal vinyl I do get from my local supplier. Their old name was JSI Signs, but I believe they changed it to Perfect Press HTV. I do always link them in my descriptions. They're a great company, and they're probably the cheapest I have found. I know their 12 by 12 sheets of vinyl are only 50 cents. So you can really buy full sheets of vinyl because it's so cheap, even if you just want to sample some. I usually get their rolls. I know that their gold chrome roll that I get 15 feet at a time, and I think it's like $18. So this one is done. So we will let this vinyl sit for a little bit and adhere to the tumbler. And you guys can see that I pretty much went in a straight line, but I do like my swirls to kind of have a little bit more interest. So the edges of my vinyl are not super straight. I do put some little spots that make it not super even along the edges, if that makes sense. I'm not sure. And once we get all this vinyl on there, we are going to apply another layer of epoxy. I do not seal my vinyl with anything. I just put it directly on my turner. And then we will add our Milky Way lines. And you don't have to add Milky Way if you don't want to. I just think it kind of, you know, brings something else to the tumbler. It also helps to kind of disguise the leopard print a little bit because, like I mentioned, I don't want the leopard print to be super noticeable. I just want it to kind of catch your eye when you're turning your cup or things like that. I also like to try to do as many different techniques in my tumblers, especially if I am doing tutorials, so that way you guys can see different techniques in one tutorial versus just one or two. And now we are ready to epoxy. So for this step, we are just applying some epoxy. I am not going to do the Milky Way directly on top of the vinyl for two reasons. The first reason is because I do use some heat when I am trying to create cells in my Milky Way, and I do not want my torch to burn the opal vinyl. We all know that opal vinyl is really sensitive to heat, so I don't want it to wrinkle or have curved edges or lift or anything like that. And two, I don't want the vinyl to get in the way of the Milky Way. I don't want any of these white lines to kind of get snagged on the vinyl and make, you know, weird little lines or things that I don't want. So I'm epoxying this so we can start our Milky Way on a smooth surface. So now that our first layer of epoxy has cured, we are going to go back with a thicker layer of epoxy. I use more epoxy than I would if I am trying to cover glitter. You guys can see that I'm being a little heavy-handed, but not so thick that it's going to cause globs of epoxy anywhere. I use a thicker layer because when I apply my Milky Way, I want it to have enough epoxy to kind of move around. That is how the armor art or whatever you're using is going to create cells and those cool little swirls that we are looking to get. I will point out that if you use too thin of a layer of epoxy, then the Milky Way is not going to swirl or create those cells. It will just kind of stay in the same place that it's at, and if you hit it with too much heat, then you could burn the epoxy and cause craters versus cells or swirls. So once we have our epoxy on, we are going to hit our cups with our torch. I prefer the torch over the heat gun. A heat gun is really just going to move the epoxy around. It can also blow dust or debris into your epoxy, and we definitely do not want that. The torch gets much hotter than a heat gun, so it pops bubbles much more easily with not as much effort. The heat from the torch also helps to heat up the epoxy a little bit, and that can help the epoxy move, especially if we're going to be doing a Milky Way. I typically just move my torch back and forth on the tumbler for one full rotation. That is how I know that every spot on my tumbler has gotten hit with the torch and bubbles have been popped. I did have a few more cups on my turner, so I just decided to epoxy them as I was doing this one. So once our bubbles are popped, we are ready to apply the Milky Way part of our design. I am using bronze armor art and white armor art. I get these from CCDIY. We're also going to be using a little bit of glitter. We're using Coconut Snowball Martini from the Drunk Flamingo. I went ahead and mixed a small amount of bronze and white armor art and the glitter into some epoxy. It just takes a small drop. You can add less if you want it a little bit more transparent, or you can add more if you want it more opaque. I like my white pretty opaque because when it creates cells, you can really see the definition of those cells in your epoxy. And I use this little spatula to kind of help spread out the Milky Way. I like my lines not as defined. I kind of like to smooth them out so it creates more of a whimsical Milky Way, I guess you could say. And I will keep a paper towel on handy so I can wipe my spatula. So I'm going to start by just drizzling thin lines in between where our glitter colors meet. So you really just need one line. This white armor art goes a long way. And then we're just going to spread it out. Now when I use my spatula, I am not really applying any force to the tumbler. I just kind of set my spatula on the tumbler and let the cup kind of drag the spatula through the lines as it turns, because I don't want to take a whole lot of this white off. I just want to spread it out. And you can go back, you can see that I'm kind of taking some white that gets on the spatula and kind of spreading it through other parts of the tumbler. And if you don't want as much of the white, you can always add a thinner line than I did, or if you don't want any at all, you don't have to add the Milky Way. And once I spread the white, I'm going to go back through the white and add some of the bronze. I did not make the bronze as opaque because I just wanted kind of a little touch of color throughout the white. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the glitter. Just adding a thin line just to kind of break up the white part of the Milky Way. And once you are happy with your Milky Way, we are going to go hit it with heat. And I do focus a little bit more on the Milky Way part because this is what helps spread the armor art and helps create those cells. I am still moving my torch back and forth really quickly because I don't want to burn my epoxy. But if you kind of focus on some parts and then pull it away, it will help just heat that one section up a little bit and spread it to make the cells. And once the epoxy starts to heat up a little bit, you will see the lines kind of start to soften a little bit. They won't be so harsh. And you can see if there's any little spots that you may need to touch up. I always like to keep my spatula on hand because if there is one part that may be a little bit too heavy on the white armor art, I can always just take it and run my spatula back through it and thin it out a little bit so the white won't be so overwhelming. Like I already see one part on my pastel leopard that I want to kind of fix a little bit. So I went ahead and thinned that part out, and then I will hit it with my torch again just to kind of blend those colors. And the epoxy will continue to kind of move and swirl until the epoxy is cured. So you don't want to overheat it and cause it to get really runny, which I have definitely done that a few times. And that is pretty much it, you guys. Once this layer of epoxy cures, I will add one more layer and these cups will be finished. And I will post some finished pictures of them. I really love how these turned out. I like the neon colors and then the pastel colors. I thought they were really fun to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and if you had questions on the Milky Way process, I hope that this answered some questions for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this video or learned something new, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to find my tutorial group on Facebook, which is linked in the description. Thanks for watching.